Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your Sunday night show as we talk the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, but we're going to start off on what is a big topic. And it's a very big topic because we're talking about cost cutting. We're talking about the clearance, the clear out. We're talking about certain players that probably shouldn't go being moved out of the club, whether this is a good or a bad thing. I put a tweet out today. It caused a few people to get on their high horse. I love it. Get on your high horse. I'm on mine. Let's get the jousts out and have a joust. That's what it's all about. Opinions. So look, you can take this statement as in many different ways as you want. I mean, that's the point. That's the point of saying something like this. If we're selling Casemiro to cut costs, how is the INEOS deal for the better? It's cost cutting. It's a rhetorical question. There's a question mark in there. Get answering your questions about this because bottom line is, this morning, reports coming out that Man United want to offload Casemiro. They want to offload Casemiro. They want to offload Varane. For me, Varane is Manchester United's best centre-back and Casemiro is Manchester United's best midfielder. This is cost cutting. Cost cutting doesn't necessarily mean negativity. Some people will react and say, how are INEOS any better than the Glazers? If we're cost-cutting, we're not going to get anywhere by cost-cutting. But actually, I think maybe you could. Maybe you could. Let me just get rid of this twat in the chat. Mods, do your job. We're not having people with those emojis in here. Get them out. But the reality is, it's really interesting to delve into this and what the future is in this transfer window, what it means for Man United, what it means for Ten Hag. Because there are opportunities there. I watched Liverpool play Arsenal today, and I think, you know, we're not that far off, really, if we sort some of the problems out. And you can certainly remove Casemiro and Varane and have a better future. But you can also remove them and have a much worse future. And I think what we've got to look at here is you'll get your sympathisers, your Glazer sympathisers who now are INEOS sympathisers because they're Glazer sympathisers. You'll get your realists. You'll get your negatives. You're going to get all sorts. And the bottom line is nobody has got an absolute clue what is going on. You get people out there talking like they're sat in the boardroom of Manchester United and they know exactly what our future's going to be when the boardroom's not even been constructed and the review's not even been completed. So all these people who go, oh, no, this is the right thing to do. They don't know. They're plucking it out the arse like the rest of us. We don't know what the future is. But I'll tell you what I was thinking when I typed this. If we're selling Casemiro to cut costs, how is this INEOS deal for the better? Question mark. I don't know. I'm asking that question. How is this INEOS deal for the better if they're coming into the club, getting rid of the biggest earners to raise money to build another team that's cheaper? How is that better if you get it wrong? Contrast that with Qatar, who would have come in and not done that. They wouldn't need to do that. They wouldn't have debt. They'd have billions of pounds to chuck at the club that they owned exclusively. This is a different path to go down. And I'll argue that with anybody because a full ownership and a clearance of the debt is very different to shit. We need to raise money by clearing the wage bill. The wage bill needs to be cleared, but you can clear the wage bill in a better way. You know, Harry Maguire's on 200 grand a week. We talk about Casemiro and Varane on 300 grand a week. Harry Maguire's on 200 grand a week. Luke Shaw's on 180 grand a week. Anthony Martial's on 200 grand a week. Marcus Rashford's on 350 grand a week. There are other options other than going, well, get rid of Varane because he's old. Well, he's actually younger than Maguire and only a year older than Lindelof. Get rid of Casemiro because he's old. He's actually younger than Eriksen and he's only probably 2 or 3 years older than Bruno now. So look, there's different ways of doing things, and I want to sort of get your thoughts on this. Byron says, hi, Mark. I'm flying from South Africa to attend my first game at Old Trafford against Spurs. Really hope the team shows up that day. I think we're going to win. I think we'll win that because they play a high line. Mark, we need to clear out badly. Can INEOS do this, says James? And assuming this season is a washout, why can't we sell Casemiro, Varane and build for the future? Both are not getting any younger, says Ashwin. But I've literally just given you my answer to that. The naivety of going, get rid of Casemiro and Varane. I know they're two of our best players, but they're old. Maguire's older than Varane. We're keeping him then? Eriksen's older than Casemiro. We're keeping him then? Lindelof's a year younger than Lindelof. We're keeping him then? The hypocrisy of saying, all right, Varane and Casemiro are two of our best players, but they're getting on a bit. Let's get rid of them. But what are we doing with Maguire? What are we doing with Lindelof? What are we doing with Eriksen? You know, there are a lot of other players that aren't as good as Varane and Casemiro, who are on good wages, Are we keeping them, or are we just picking off the biggest earners? Because if we're just picking off the biggest earners, how is this any better than the Glazers? And what I mean by that is it's haphazard. If you're going to have a clear out, please clear out the players that aren't good enough. Because to me, if you want to get rid of Varane's 300 grand a week, well, Maguire and Lindelof would cover keeping Varane. So there are many different ways of looking at this, and that's what I'm talking about. I don't disagree, James, and I'll actually explain why cost cutting, because it is cost cutting. People see cost cutting as a negative. I'll tell you why it's a positive. It can be a positive, but it is cost cutting. I'm not listening to anybody tell me this is not cost cutting. Of course it's cost cutting. If you want to get rid of a player on 300 grand a week to replace them with a younger player on 100 grand a week, that's cost cutting. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's cost cutting. It's a clear out. It's cost cutting, and people need to see it for what it is. Why are INEOS cost cutting? Because Man United spend too much money. Why are INEOS cost cutting? Maybe they don't have a lot of money. Why are INEOS cost cutting? Because it's the right thing to do. Why are INEOS cost cutting? Because they need to raise money by reducing the playing staff. We don't know. It could be for the better, it could be for the worse. We'll have to wait and see. Mark, we need to clear out. We've done that from James. Welcome to Members Club, Paul Doxey. Need to be real. Casemiro is on the same wage as Salah. What's the difference? Salah is effective and Casemiro has been on the treatment table all season. INEOS can absorb the debt for a full takeover, not 25%, says Akash. Don't know what you're talking about. Don't think you know what you're talking about either. INEOS can absorb the debt for a full takeover. The debt's $500 million, mate. The club's worth 5. What are you talking about? Rihan, welcome to the Members Club. And Byron, we've done that. I think you're going to get a great game against Spurs at the weekend because they play a high line. The positive of cost cutting. I want your thoughts on this. The positives of cost cutting are that if you remove, let's say, Casemiro and Varane, and they're on 300 grand a week, that's £600,000 a week. That's 1.2 million every 2 weeks. That's 2.5 million every month saved. That's 25 million a year, isn't it? It's more than that in saved. I've fucked that up, surely. No, I haven't. 300 grand a week is 600 grand a week when it's 2 players. Times 2 is 1.2. Times 2 is 2.4. Times 10 is 24. And then you've got another couple. Yeah, it's over 25 million in wages saved just by getting rid of Casemiro and Varane. And but with that 25 million, you've just lost 2 of your best players. To replace them, I would say, is going to cost you at least 100 million. So how do we do that? There's always a conversation to be had, isn't there? Yeah, let's get rid of Casemiro and Varane and we'll save 25 million a year. You've just lost your best centre-back and your best midfielder. How are you replacing them? But I've just saved 25 million a year. How are you replacing them? Yeah. Are we saving? And this is what I mean. When we cost cut, are we cost cutting because we're out of Europe and we're in trouble and we need that 25 million and we're never replacing Varane and Casemiro? Or are we cost cutting to bring in 2 younger players on less money, but will they be as good? And these are all the sort of questions you've got to ask. And I absolutely refuse to listen to somebody, and you shouldn't listen to me, but I refuse to listen to somebody on social media or in this chat or on the radio or on the TV tell me that getting rid of Casemiro and Varane is brilliant business because we'll get rid of them and we'll replace them with better younger players. Well, tell me the better younger players. Tell me a better younger player than Casemiro that we can buy. Tell me a better younger centre-back than Varane that we can buy, and tell me how we will do that cheaper than £25 million savings in a year. We're going to buy 2 for 10 million each and then put them on 2.5 million a year. Come on. And I know I know you're intelligent. I know you understand what I'm talking about. We have to see the red flags and we have to call them out and we have to be sceptical because I think Sir Jim Radcliffe would expect us to be that. He is not some white knight in shining armour coming out from the distance like Gandalf to save Manchester United from Helm's Deep. Far from it. He could be on the side of the Orcs, which is the Glazers. We don't know. We just do not know. We want to believe, but we don't know. So when I hear about cost cutting, I don't automatically go, oh oh yeah, get rid of our best midfielder, get rid of our best centre-back. They're on silly money. Let's get rid of them. Let's save £25 million a year. And with that money, we're going to buy Jude Bellingham and we're going to buy Van Dijk and we're going to pay them 20 grand a week. You know, we've got to think about this. There is a lot to be said for cost cutting. Personally, I think if you sold Rashford, Casemiro, Varane, Bruno, Maguire, and a couple of others, you're probably going to raise 60, 70 million pounds a year in wages. But how are you going to replace them all? And this is not my job. This is not your job. But we are going to cost cut because we are paying stupid money on wages and we're failing as a football team. We're nearly mid-table. We're out of Europe and we're paying wages for players, like somebody just said there, that Mo Salah's on. We're paying wages that Mo Salah are on to Casemiro and we're a mid-table team. But we're also paying Harry Maguire more than every Liverpool centre-back, apart from Virgil van Dijk. We're probably paying Harry Maguire more than every Man City centre-back. We're certainly paying him more than Arsenal centre-backs. So, and I'm not picking on Harry Maguire there. Lindelof is probably on more than Akanji. So, you know, the whole club is broken. And that's what I'm saying. Are we just picking on the biggest earners, or are we actually going to be intelligent and start clearing the shit as well? Because there's a lot of money to be saved there. Hi, Mark. We've done that one. Sorry. I hate the thought of losing Varane and Casemiro, but if it's part of a larger clear-out and can improve the overall quality of the squad, it's worth it, says Spot On. Welcome to Members Club, Michael McCann. And Mike might get a new manager. 300 million is... they choose. Don't know what that means, Kyle. Give or take 31.2 million. You are correct, though. It's poor business. Look at Chelsea, who got rid of their ageing players and replicated it with young, says the Inquisition. Cost cutting so they don't invest in Eric Ten Hag with the new money, says Keel Robinson. January transfers has to be strengthened, the squad. So why selling Casemiro and Varane? Answer, getting back the Champions League loss. Glazers found their soulmate, says Abdi. Paul Doxey is a new member. Look, I've left that up on screen because it's a rhetorical question for people to have their own opinion on. It evoked quite a strong response from some people. Good. I'm glad. Because it evokes something. I don't have the answer. I don't know. All I know is that a full sale from a rich owner would not have meant cost cutting because they wouldn't need to cost cut. All they'd have to do is manipulate financial fair play. Debt would be gone. Billions would be there. How do we do what Chelsea have done? We don't need to cost cut. We don't need to get rid of our best players. They've kept Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva's probably on very good money at Chelsea, but they've kept him because he's one of their best players. Thiago Silva is still playing at the highest level in the Premier League in his late 30s. And we're talking about getting rid of 31-year-old Casemiro. It's ridiculous. Ageism. Stupidism is what I call it. Oh, suddenly you're dusted when you're 31. I mean, I understand it with Varane to a certain extent because of injuries, but Casemiro is 31, and we're getting rid of him. Look at what Luka Modric has been doing for Real Madrid for the last 5 years, and he's what, 36, 37. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with getting rid of Casemiro. If Casemiro wants to go, that's a different kettle of fish. But I don't agree with getting rid of Casemiro because he's in his early 30s. See it for what it is. We're getting rid of our best midfielder because he's on big money. Now, if you're going to do that and there's a 20-year-old who is going to be better than Casemiro in 18 months, do it. 25-year-old, do it. But don't do it just because you want to save a wage. Don't do it because on a spreadsheet it says Rashford, Casemiro, Varane, Sancho, Martial. Right, we need to get rid of 4 of them. Don't do it for that reason. Do it because you've got a replacement lined up who's going to be cheaper and better. But don't do it just to save costs. And this is the question I'm asking. And I'll ask it of INEOS, and I'd ask it of Sir Jim, and so should you. How do you know this is good for Manchester United? And why are you accepting that it is? Why are you not asking questions and going, I don't like the look of this. I can see how it could work, but I could see how it's a bloody nightmare. What if they are just picking off the biggest earners apart from Rashford and getting rid of them? You know, what if it is because we weren't in Europe? What if it is a business decision from business people to come in and cut costs? I don't know whether it is, and I don't know whether it isn't. And we won't know whether it is until it's too late. I mean, if you get rid of Casemiro, who are you going to replace him with? You know, I can do the quick maths for you. I spoke about Guerra from Valencia this morning. He will cost you 50 million quid. We spoke about Neves from Benfica. He'll probably cost you 70, 80, 90 million quid. So you go for somebody who's younger, unproven, inexperienced, and needs time, who was going to cost you a lot of money. Onana at Everton's probably going to cost you 50 million quid as well. Where is this Casemiro replacement that's going to make it efficient to get rid of Casemiro at 31 and save his wages to bring in somebody else who's going to cost you 50, 60, 70 million? Where is this plan? And I think that that's something you've got to look at. Ryan says, to be fair, Thiago Silva is on 100k and not 300k. Doesn't matter, Ryan. It really doesn't matter. The point is, people are saying get rid of Casemiro because he's 31. Thiago Silva's 38. Modric is into his mid-30s, late 30s, I think now. I don't care if we're paying 300k a week for Casemiro because we're paying 350 grand a week for Rashford. So let's not pretend that Casemiro's on ridiculous money and he's the only one. Casemiro was Player of the Year for me last year, and so was Marcus Rashford. So they've both had a bad season. Are we selling them both? Or are we just getting rid of one of them because, you know, he's a little bit older than the other one? I think we've got to be more intelligent here. And I might be the only one, and I might be the minority, but when I hear that we're trying to sell Varane and Casemiro, red flags. I go, hold on a minute. This, to me, worries me because is it somebody looking at a spreadsheet, like I say, and going, get rid of those because they're old and on big money? And do they know about football? I mean, as somebody said the other day, what does Sir Jim Radcliffe know about football? What does Sir David Brailsford know about football? What if they are just looking at a spreadsheet and going, oh, they're over 30 and they're on 350 grand a week, get rid of them? You know, why are we putting trust into these people? Why do we think that they know better than what we know? I hope they do, but I'm not going to sit there like a fucking lemon and go, yeah, I'll jump off that cliff with you. Sounds great. I can't see the bottom. It's very misty. Sounds a bit rocky down there. But let's do it. It's great. I've got any parachutes? No, fine. Okay. There might be a big trampoline, you know. I think you've got to scrutinise things. And with that comes debate and conversation. But there is nobody out there with the definitive answer because cost cutting can be positive. Of course it can, but it can also be very concerning. I mean, on a very basic level, forget the money for a moment. If I said to you, where are we in the league? I don't know, 8th or 7th? I don't know. But let's say we're 7th or 8th in the Premier League. I don't look at it very often because it's not nice viewing. So if I said to you, okay, fan forum time, proper fan forum, not the pratty fan forum they've got at the moment, but proper fan forum, you know, like everybody's involved. And I said to you, I'm speaker and I'm going like, I'm the new owner of the football side, right? We're 8th in the league. We're out of the Carabao Cup. We're out of Europe completely. We've got the FA Cup and let's hope we can get to 6th. My plan is to get rid of 2 or 3 of our best players to save us a bit of money. Someone's going to say, mate, we are nowhere near. We're out of Europe. We're nowhere near the top 4. And you're going to get rid of our 2 or 3 of our best players to save money. How is that going to make us go up the league? All that's going to do is save you a bit of money. How are we moving up the league by removing 2 or 3 of our best players? Because we're going to replace them with cheaper players. Right, so we're going to get rid of 2 or 3 of our best players because they're on big wages, and you're going to replace them with cheaper players. Yeah, that way we save money, and we're better as a team. This is what I mean. We need proof in the pudding. We're not entitled to it. All I'm saying is, if you remove Casemiro, who is replacing him? If you remove Varane, who is replacing him? And more importantly to me, if you remove Casemiro, why is Eriksen not going? If you remove Varane, why is Maguire and Lindelof not going? Because that doesn't look to me like a clear out and cost cutting to make us better. That looks to me like, doesn't matter how good you are, you're on the big wages, so you're off. You can't let Varane go and keep Maguire and Lindelof. You can't let Casemiro go and keep Eriksen and McTominay. That's ridiculous. That's not a clear out. That literally is walking into a restaurant as the new owner and saying, get rid of that expensive chair, we'll keep the cheap ones. Get rid of that expensive beer, we'll keep the cheap ones. That's not how you run a business. That's not how you run a football club. That's how you run a business. So I'm interested, but I will admit that cost cutting isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I say, you could walk in, you could get rid of Rashford, Casemiro, Varane, Sancho, Martial. Your highest earner is now 250 grand a week. You've just obliterated your wage budget and you've also brought your wage ceiling down. Nobody can walk into that club anymore and say, I want 300 grand a week, because you go, no, we've got a limit. We don't pay anybody more than 250. That could be seen as a positive. You save a load of money, but you get your wage structure done overnight. That could be a positive. Then, with all those players gone, you bring in younger, hungrier players on less money with a better bonus structure. And over the next 3 or 4 years, you become a better team. And you look back and go, that was a good thing. So it can work, but it's a bit disjointed if you get rid of 2 players on 300 grand a week, but you keep one who's on 350. He's going to be way out ahead of everybody else, and he better be bloody good for it. So these are all questions you've got to ask. And look, we don't even know the truth. Sir Jim Radcliffe might be sat there tonight going, what's this bollocks? I don't want to sell Casemiro. I think he's a bloody brilliant player. I'm not getting rid of him. I'm not getting rid of Varane either. So we don't know, but we don't know who Ten Hag's going to pick in goal tomorrow night. Doesn't mean we don't talk about it. Selling Varane and Casemiro reminds me of the Ghana deal. Instead of working on the harder deals, they're going because it's easy, says Brandon. Well, I think that's always a good point as well. You know, let's sell the players people want instead of getting rid of the players that people don't want. I mean, there's a big lesson there. Why do you think people want to buy the players that you're going to sell? Because they're decent. Why do you think they don't want to buy the players that you do want to sell? Because they're not very good. I don't think they realise you've spent a decent amount to get a class player unless they're going on hope and replacement players are good, says Tony. Matthew James, thank you very much for your super chat. Casemiro's younger than Kevin De Bruyne as well, says Aaron. And the same cost-cutting bollocks was said under Ollie. Next thing, along comes Ronaldo and Casemiro and Varane. Remember, it was the same thing said when Cavani and co were there as well, says Kay. Good point. Gabrielle says, been a member for 19 months, and what a great 19 months. I think we shouldn't sell Varane unless we have a solid replacements, which we don't have. Sakin says they're not English either. That's why they're going. And Zane says, Mark, I love Bruno, but I also miss first-year Bruno. He should have shoot more, in my opinion. Casemiro can go. Why not? They will get Thuram and Todibo. Yeah, but Thuram's... I don't rate that Thuram at Nice. I hope if he comes to United, I hope it works, but I don't rate that Thuram at Nice. I think he's overrated. I like Todibo. I don't think that Thuram's that good. But if somebody said to me this, Rashford, Casemiro, Martial, Sancho, Varane, all gone, and in comes Elise, Neves from Benfica, Guerra from Valencia, Todibo from Nice, and we'd need a striker as well, wouldn't we? So, I don't know, a young striker that's decent. Tell me so. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Cleaned the dressing room, brought the wage bill down. I wouldn't be opposed to that. That's the sort of ruthless evolution that needs to take place at Man United. But we won't. I don't think we'll do that. I think we'll get rid of a couple of players that probably shouldn't go, and we'll keep 2 or 3 players that should go, and the same cycle will continue. I think that if you're going to break it down, I've said many, many times before, Mark, it's all the foreign players, but never the UK players, says the Liverpool stand. I've said many times to you that if we're really going to change Manchester United, then we need to reset. We need to break it all down. And if you're going to break it all down, you have got to be ruthless. You have got to say bye to Varane, bye to Casemiro, but you've also got to say bye to Maguire, bye to McTominay, maybe bye to Rashford, maybe bye to Bruno. You know, that's a proper ruthless breakdown. You can't just pick and choose. When you get rid of Ronaldo, you don't keep everybody else. Ronaldo going was ruthless by Ten Hag, but he kept everybody else. So it becomes irrelevant. It becomes absolutely irrelevant. If you've got a gang of people at school who are bullies and you get rid of one of them, but you keep 3 or 4, you don't get rid of the bullying problem, do you? So we need to take it all out, or what's the point? The 2 non-British players who have been there, done that, winning things, not something other squad players can say, need this winning mentality, says Matthew. I suppose that's a good point as well. Abdi says, if it's cost-cutting on wages, logically, bought player will get less wages, which means low-level players, not obviously the ones Ten Hag wants. And removing Casemiro and Varane, you remove our leaders, says Matt. And Scythe says, I've got no issue with cost cutting as long as if they're getting rid of Varane and Casemiro, Rashford goes too, and the wage structure is fixed. And Roy says, the biggest question of all is why the Glazers have walked away with 1.25 billion. Wasn't their brief they were looking for investment for the club? And Brandon, I think we've done that as well. And then Rehan says, news just broke that Jim's retail brand Belfast might go under administration. Losses went from 16 million to 28. I don't know whether that's true, Rihan. And Mark, what about Dybala? Linked with a move. Watched some videos of him on YouTube and he's really good. This is Bounty Hunter. And Stefan says, can I have a happy birthday shout out to Cindy, even though she's banned you from sharing a bedroom with us? Okay, Cindy, that sounds very sinister, but happy birthday to Cindy. And that's from Stefan and the United Stand crew as well. But look, it's evoked a good conversation and that's what it's all about. I don't know what is going to happen, but I do think that it's very, very clear from, and we remember how it works. You know, you put a story out that you might get rid of Casemiro and you wait for the reaction. You put a story out that you might give Ten Hag a new contract, you wait for the reaction. Football clubs don't necessarily listen to fans, but their biggest customer is the fans. So if they're going to do something, Man United for years have put something out there and waited to see how it goes, and they may well just be dropping this out there to see how the fans react. And ultimately, the message back to the club and INEOS and Sir Jim and everybody else has got to be: you're not going to get a free ride because you haven't bought the entirety of the club. It's not a full sale, and you can't tell us what the good and the bad and the ugly is. You've done a deal with the Glazers. You're not allowed to speak negatively about them. So we are therefore deprived, really, of the truth. What we can handle the truth, but we won't get the truth. And we can't, with no track record, say that we trust you to get rid of certain players because we're concerned about what players you're going to keep. And we've been down this road before. We've lost David De Gea. We've lost Cristiano Ronaldo. And you've kept other people. That's a concern. And those other people, they can be anybody. They can be McTominay, they can be Rashford, they can be Bruno, they can be Maguire. But the bottom line is we've removed big earner coming towards the end of their career leaders before, and we still get shitter. So I think that I'm not opposed to selling anybody because I think the performances of United in recent years, unless you're a young player like Garnacho or Mainu or Højlund, I don't think you get away with it. I really don't. I think every player's got to be looked at, but you can't pick and choose who you get rid of. You've got to get rid of everybody, or it won't work. And I just think there's certain. I think there are certain players at that club who, for whatever reason, have their claws into that club so deep that they are almost. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good they are. They're part of the furniture. And I can think of 6 straight away. Hi, Mark. 14K watching. Fancy a poll. Get rid of certain players versus wholesale, or however you want to write it. Cheers. I don't know how that works, Sheriff, because I don't really know what you're talking about in relation to getting rid of certain players or a full sale. We're not having a full sale. Obviously, that's not what's happening. So if you want to reword it, I'm more than happy to put it out there. But I don't really know what that actually means. But there was a great question a minute ago, and it was, what would you do? What would you do in this situation? And I think this is a great point, because this is why I said a few times, cost cutting is something we all don't like. Everybody hates that word, cost cutting, because it's a negative. But it isn't necessarily a negative if it's done correctly. If you can bring in better players for cheaper and reduce your wage bill, why wouldn't you do it? Only an idiot wouldn't do it. If somebody said to me, you know your petrol that you pay for, you can get it down the road for half the price and it's the same petrol. Only an idiot's not going to start going down the road. So look, that's cost cutting, and it's for a good reason. So you can, the outcry about the word cost cutting makes me laugh, because cost cutting can be a positive as well, but it can also be a massive negative. It can also be, we're not buying that brand of shower gel anymore, even though it's really, really nice. We've got to save money, so we're now getting the cheap one, and that's the thing. And I don't know what the truth is. I don't know what INEOS's plan is. Are they cost cutting to get the cheap option and save money? Or are they cost cutting because they found things that they think are better for half the price? And that's where the question has to be asked. And you know what? When you're balancing that question out, you always have to remember that we are still owned by the Glazers. And you also have to remember the last 10 years. And there's absolutely very little reason for most Man United fans to go, I'm positive that we're doing it for the right reasons. I'm positive if we sell Varane and Casemiro, we'll get better players for cheaper. And if you feel like that, lovely stuff. But, and I'm not a cynic, I genuinely don't trust either answer. So I'm like skeptical. And you have to be vocal about that. Of course you do. Cyber Spider says, instead of selling Casemiro, sell Scott, Ericsson and Donny. Mainu, Mount and new box-to-box player are replacements. It's about boxing smart. And Mark, do you watch a lot of non-Premier League football? Just wondering, because everyone in United Stand always says I haven't seen a lot of this player when we're looking at someone, says KFJ. Well, I think people are very selective about what they watch, aren't they? Some people just watch United. Some people don't watch other Premier League games. Saifu says, between the owners trying to save a book and the coach falling out with all our most talented players, it's hard to see a glimmer of hope, says, well, you know, I think there's always hope. And at the end of the day, we are still owned by the Glazers, and this has their fingerprints all over it. But INEOS and Sir Jim Radcliffe will be the face of it, says Tony. And that, you know, but in fairness, that's what they're fighting against. I have a lot of sympathy for, look, the reality is I didn't want this, but the reality is it's the reality. I do have a lot of sympathy with INEOS and Sir Jim because whatever they do, people will think that. If there's a glimmer of negativity around something, he will be a Glazer puppet, and there's nothing he can do about that. Some people would say, well, he is a Glazer puppet technically because he only owns 25% and the Glazers are in charge, therefore he's a puppet. But on the other hand, what if he is absolutely determined to remove the Glazers in a few years' time and make Man United a great club again, and he knows about everything he wants? There has to be a little bit of slack there. But on the other hand, as well, there has to be that suspicion. And the only way he can move through that is by making good decisions. I read it in an article a few weeks ago, and I completely agree with it. There will be no honeymoon period for INEOS. There will be no leeway for INEOS. If they bought the full club and cleared the debt, then he would have got a honeymoon period. He would have been given time. But because he's in bed with the Glazers, so to speak, there is no real patience or time or leeway. Everything he does will be scrutinised by everybody, and he's got to get it right. Which is why I think not sacking Ten Hag until at least the summer is an intelligent move. And I'll call out the positives. I think that's an intelligent move because, you know, if he comes in and sacks him straight away, look at how popular Mourinho is now after being sacked. Even though we all agreed with it at the time, time's been a very, very kind on the sacking of Mourinho that it was the wrong thing to do. I think not spending money in January is a very intelligent thing to do. It'd be very easy to walk in and say there's 50 million quid, but I think it's a mistake. So look, I think that's a good idea as well. I think the strategic review is a good idea as well, but not everything they're going to do is going to be a good idea. Because if it was, they'd already own a football club. They've tried to own Barcelona. They've tried to own Chelsea. They've tried to take Nice to certain levels, and they haven't quite got it right. So there is going to be mistakes, and because there will be mistakes, I think it's only right as fans that we scrutinise a lot of the decision making and question whether it's the right thing or not. Whether they listen is up for debate. Is Javi Guerra replacing Casemiro, says Rehan? No. He's not even a holding midfielder for a start. He's a 20-year-old box-to-box player with the potential to play at 6, but also may well just be an 8. No, he's not a replacement for Casemiro. From what I've seen. Mark, do you watch it? I've done that one from KFJ. Hope you're okay, says Jack. Do you fancy our chances in winning the FA Cup this season? Well, you know what, Jack? To pardon me for the footballing cliche, but I really am just going to take it a step at a time because I feel that it's very difficult to sort of... what's the word? Can't get my words out. It's very difficult to be confident around Manchester United at the moment. As soon as you say, oh, we'll beat Wigan comfortably, you turn the game on and you realise the players aren't up for it and you think this could be a very long evening. So I want us to do well in the FA Cup. It's the only cup we can win now, and I think the first job is to get through Wigan and hope we can just get a few easy draws. I really wouldn't fancy the prospect of playing a Liverpool or a Manchester City at the moment, and they're obviously both into the next round. So the FA Cup is massive, though. I mean, it doesn't really matter what I think, and it doesn't really matter what you think. What I can say with total honesty is that the FA Cup, Ten Hag has got to go deep. He's got to go really deep into the FA Cup. I mean, he's got to be in that FA Cup in April, and that's the semi-finals. He's got to be in the FA Cup then, because if he's out of the FA Cup in January, February or March, then there's still a long time left in the season, and people will be going, get rid of him. As soon as, I mean, look, this is what happened to David Moyes. As soon as top four is mathematically not possible, David Moyes got the sack. I would say if Ten Hag is mathematically out of the race for top four in March and we're out the FA Cup, you'd really wonder whether he'll survive the summer. So I think that he's got to stay in the FA Cup and Champions League qualification for as long as possible, and certainly April. And looking at some of the fixtures, Champions League qualification, we could be out of that race by March. So he's got to go well in the FA Cup, because whether I think it or whether you think it, his job is under scrutiny, without a shadow of a doubt. Sir Jin says we're going to win the FA Cup. Hope so. I would sell everyone that's been here since Ollie, in my opinion. We had our worst league season ever because of each and every one of them, says Jack. You know what? I think, just talking about the players for a moment. I mean, the interesting thing about Casemiro is I think he's sort of immune. I think he gets a pass. And I think Martinez gets a pass as well. I don't understand the criticism of Casemiro other than the injury, because the amazing thing about Casemiro is, when you look at it, is that, and I want to talk about the players for a moment, but when you look at Casemiro, last season, brilliant. My player of the year, Casemiro. I think if you took Casemiro out of that team last year, would have been mid-table. I think he was that good. Start of the season, really struggled. But so did Rashford, so did Bruno. In fact, so did everybody. So everybody's had a shit season this year, apart from probably 2 or 3 players. And also, one of the big criticisms that Casemiro got from Prats, who've played the game but clearly don't analyse the game, is we heard nonsense like, his legs are gone. I'm telling you now, Gabby, his legs are gone. He's gone. His legs are gone. He's fell off. And I'm like, he hasn't. There's no way his legs have fell off. I've just watched him play in the World Cup for Brazil, and he was probably Brazil's best player. I've just watched him play for Man United, and he was our best player across a whole season. His legs have not gone in the space of 2 weeks. What happened to Casemiro is what's happened to Mainu. It's what's happened to Amrabat. You play holding midfielder for Man United, and you're like a daddy long legs having your legs pulled off. You don't know which way you're going. And I think that's what sort of threw a lot of people with Casemiro at the start of the season. They were like, how's this player who was so good last year not doing well this year? And it was the midfield tweak that Ten Hag did. He removed the 8 next to Casemiro and went to this weird 2 attacking midfielders, which exposes your midfielder. And we've seen it happen to Mainu, and we've seen it happen to Amrabat. So Casemiro, for me, isn't really an issue. The injury is an issue, but I think when he comes back, as long as we put someone with him and we don't leave him on his own again, I think we will see an improved Casemiro, much the same as we saw with Martinez. But I think the big problem we've got with the team at the moment is that it's just not likeable. It's really sad. I feel guilty saying this, but they're not likeable as a team. There's certain individuals that are more unlikable than others, and there are certain individuals that you really like. You know, I'm a massive fan of Rasmus. I like Garnacho. Mainu's been a breath of fresh air. There's a few others as well, to be fair. And there's a few that you're just really pissed off with. But as a collective, it's not a likeable team. And that's not fair on some of them, but that team is not likeable. And that's something Sir Jim's got to look at, because football fans aren't stupid. They're not. I mean, I've been to so many games and seen, you're there and you pick up on the crowd, who they like and who they don't like. And it's always been like that. I've experienced that for 40 years. You know, you're watching a game and you're like, a live game, and you know, a player gets the ball and you can tell who the crowd like, you can tell who the crowd don't mind, and you can tell who the crowd really don't think should be wearing a Man United shirt. And that is hard to turn, especially with a match-going fan. It's hard to turn because they're there. A lot of these people are season ticket holders, and they're not going to just suddenly see that player score a goal and go, I've been wrong for the last 2 years. So this is a problem, an identity problem for Man United. And you don't turn it around by doing a bit of charity work in midweek. You know, that's great, but that's not how you do it. You don't turn it around with a bit of PR spin. Some of these players at Man United have got a real identity crisis with its support, where they're not likeable. And that is a big problem that Sir Jim should be putting in as part of his review. Because I do this show most days, and it stuns me how disliked some of our players are that I like. And then, you know, you don't. I mean, I'll name a name, Dalot. I can't believe how much Dalot splits this fan base, because I really like him. You know, he has got some limitations, but I really like Dalot, and I think he really likes Man United, and I think he works really hard. And I think he's a likeable player. But it really surprises me when I see in the chat how some people just really don't like Dalot. Not like they dislike him, but as a player, they're like, no, I think he's crap. Luke Shaw's another one. I've always been a massive fan of Luke Shaw. He's a real divisive player. Like, some people think he's shit. And it amazes me. So that's a big problem for INEOS. Not in relation to Luke Shaw and Dalot and saying sell those two. There are other players, as we know, that we mention a lot that we don't need to mention here. But it really is a problem with United at the moment. It's not just the manager. It's not just the Glazers. There is a real problem with the Man United fan base and that playing squad. And basically, the trust is gone, isn't it? That's the problem. Most Man United fans don't trust those players. And the one thing you want to do on a Saturday afternoon, or, well, Sunday afternoon, or whatever time they play the games now, is when you've been working hard all week, or, you know, you park your life to watch your team, and you want your team to embody you and represent you. And that's what it always is. And you know what? You might see a Stevenage fan or a Shrewsbury fan who, all right, they're not the best team in the world, but when they watch their team, they feel they're part of their team. And United have lost that. They've lost that connection with their fan base. Their players have lost that connection because they can't be trusted. They can do what they did against Villa in the second half and really be part of that crowd, and then they can turn up at Forest and just not be arsed. And that is a big problem as well. You can talk about cutting costs. You can talk about rebuilding Old Trafford. You can talk about changing the manager. But fundamentally, what do we see most as fans? We watch 90 minutes 2 or 3 times every week, and that's your brand. That's your target. That's your audience. And that playing squad, that team, at the moment, has got a very low likability rating, and it's got to go up. And the funny thing about that is, as somebody said, people like Casemiro are very likeable, and they're winners who've done it all. Are they the players you really want to be getting rid of from the club just to save a bit of money? Or do you want to look at some of the players that aren't as likeable, who haven't actually got a winning mentality? And again, this all has to go into it, because Sir David Brailsford might say to Sir Jim, I want to get rid of Casemiro because there's people who will give us good money for him and it will bring his wage down. But Sir Jim might go, yeah, but the fans like him and he's a winner. Get rid of him. And we lose that, and we keep players that the fans maybe don't like as much, who aren't winners. You know, Dave, what I'm talking about? These are conversations. It's not always about money, because what money do they make from us not being in tune with the fans, with the team? No money. But then you do, really, because a happier fan base spends more money and is more vocal about the club they love. Massive, absolutely massive. In a way, I'd love to be involved, but in another way, I think it's a very, very, very difficult job. And it's a much easier job when you own the full club. If you own the full club, it's an easier job. It's a much harder job when you've only got 25% and the Glazers involved. Mark, remember what Ronaldo said about Dalot? He's the one among very short list of players who is more technical ability and higher ceiling, says Akil. Cost cutting will cost us in quality players, says your Mason. And Sheriff has just gifted 50 memberships, by the way. I didn't notice that, but I always will, because we've got a little section now where it lists off all super chats and everything. So thank you, Sheriff. Really appreciate that. You're a legend. Amir says, why does the media always think Man United fans are thick? Like you said, Mark, this is just a vanity project, and I'm worried mid-table is coming, says Amir. Between Dalot and Wan-Bissaka, who's more technical? Dalot. I think Wan-Bissaka's better defensively. Mark, I'm a supporter. Is the problems at United psychological among the players? Well, yes, Bounty Hunter. I think there is a mentality problem there. I really hope we see a Bruno, Casemiro and Mainu midfield, says Baggo. I mean, look, yeah, just once give us that midfield, yeah. William says, Mark, honestly, Sir Jim is clueless. I have no faith in a guy who is in bed with the Glazers. The club is finished. I don't see Jim doing anything, says William. And Rian says, obviously, it's meant ridiculous if McTominay outlasts Casemiro. And Glenny Boy says, I guess if INEOS are intending to appoint what they see as best-in-class director of football and head of recruitment, there must be some method to the madness, let's hope. Yeah, look, I was very angry when I... Look, I've got to be fair to myself. I will apologise if I get things wrong, but I did say last March when the Elliott Group were looking to, were being rumoured to be offering the Glazers a chance to stay, I lost my shit. You can find the video, but basically this story came out that this American investment company was going to buy a percentage and keep the Glazers in, and I lost my shit because I basically said anybody who does that is an enemy of the football club. Anybody who props the Glazers up and allows them to stay is an enemy of the football club. And I nailed that flag to the mast, you know, and I stand by it. So it sort of sent me down a road with the INEOS deal where I couldn't be a hypocrite. I had to say, look, I'm dead against this. It's keeping the Glazers in. It's not a full sale. And I've got to be consistent. Just because it's Sir Jim, who's a local lad and, you know, supports the club, he's still doing a deal with the Glazers and keeping them here. And I said when the Elliott Group were going to do it that they're an enemy of the football club. So I did say Sir Jim's an enemy of the football club at the time. I also said it was a vanity project where he just clearly wants to get hold of some part of the football club for his own purposes. And if he was a genuine Manchester United fan, he'd look at the Qatar bid and go, that's better for the club. And I said that as well. And it's been a long time since I've said it, but to be honest, I probably still agree with it. If I was a Man United fan and I had the money to buy 25% of the club, but there's somebody who's going to clear the debt and buy all of it, I know that's better for the club. I know it is. But I want to own part of the club because I think I can build it. Might take me longer, but I think I can. That's what a vanity project is. It's about what I think. It's not about what's necessarily best for the project. It's what I think. And I think that's what Sir Jim has done. My hope is, because and I also said when it was a reality, I mean, you can moan about it when you don't want it to happen, but when it happens, you either keep moaning about it or you try to see the positives of it and you try to live in the reality. I didn't want this, but it is happening. So I hope it works. That's where I am. The reality is it's happening and I hope it works. And whether it's a vanity project or not, it can still work as a vanity project. Whether he's getting into bed with the Glazers or not, there is still a possibility that at some point the Glazers are out and we are successful. And that's all I can hope for. And if it all comes crashing down, they can sell it to somebody who would have done what Qatar was going to do anyway. But, you know, I just hope it is going to work because I think the fan base bloody deserves it. I think the last 10 years has been horrific and there are so many open goals to make things slightly better and hopefully, accumulation-wise, things will get better. But I suppose that's why, when I say what I've all just said there about the Elliott Group and everything, that's why when I see things about selling Varane or Casemiro or anything like that, I get concerned because I don't trust this project. The trust has to be earned. I think that's a great thing to say, actually. I don't trust anything I hear about Sir Jim or INEOS. Not because I don't like them, not because I don't think they could be successful, but because the trust has not been earned. And I think that's the best way, isn't it? Trust has to be earned. And they've got to earn our trust. And actions speak louder than words. And there are so many actions to be done. And look, one thing is, it will be a very interesting road, I suppose. Glenny Boy says, I guess if INEOS have done that one, thank you very much. And Zane says, would you bring back Memphis Depay? Can play at striker and left wing. He's on the bench because of Morata. And thoughts on Santiago Jimenez, 18 goals and broke Luis Suarez's record in the Eredivisie. Zane, we've got Fabrizio on the show tomorrow, and I'm doing the show because Beth's not until later because we've got a match. So I'm with Fabrizio tomorrow at 1:30. This is my main topic of conversation. Timo Werner is off the table. Where are we going next? So watch that show at 1:30 because that's the question I can't answer, Zane. You mentioned Memphis Depay. I've heard of TK. I've heard Malin. I've heard all sorts. United look like they're going to bring a striker in. Who is it going to be? And I don't have that answer. I mean, as long as it's not Wout Weghorst, I think we can all sleep safely at night, can't we? That Havertz performance is going to increase. I'm not going to talk about that, Rayhan. It's a bit inappropriate, to be honest. But he's basically slagging off Havertz, which is, I think, fine. Yeah. Well, great show tonight. I enjoy these sorts of shows because I don't necessarily have the answer. It's a debate. But I think some people get really sensitive about it's the and some people say, well, you're like this, and I hope I don't come across as this, but maybe I do, because I try my best. Well, I think on this I've said, look, scales. You know, you can cost cut and be successful. You can also cost cut because you're saving money. I don't know which way it's going to go, but you also get people who are so far up their own arse, they just think they know everything and tell other. I can't stand people who go, you're wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong about that. Because very rarely is somebody definitively wrong about something that person who's telling you wrong doesn't actually have all the detail on. So, you know, you're wrong. That car can't go that fast. Have you ever driven it? No, but you're wrong. Well, you've never driven it. So we've never driven this path. We've never walked this path. We don't know the solutions. And I think that these sort of conversations are really important because you can read an article and go, yeah, that sounds great. Let's get rid of Casemiro and replace him with somebody who's cheaper, who's better. But then you go, how do you do that then? Because you're only going to save 25 million in wages, and a replacement's surely going to cost you more than 50 million. So how do you do that? And conversation, debate, and ultimately we all care. That's what it's all about. We dream the same dream and we want the same thing. United back on top. But what we don't want is more wasted time and cost cutting to, you know, fight for fifth every year with a weaker team that earns less money. We're being linked to Andreas Christensen, according to the MEN, says Andy Cheaton. I don't know anything about that, Andy. But thank you very much for the update on that. I heard, what was his name? What was the name of that striker? Well, Christensen is a bloody... Is that the centre-back at Barcelona? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Yeah. Things could get worse. I mean, look, that I don't know how true that is. But if you get rid of Varane to bring in Christensen, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You lose your best centre-back for somebody who I think Harry Maguire is probably better than. Why? Save money? I don't know. What was the name of that striker? Is it Soderberg or something like that? Oh, I can't remember his name. It's not Soderberg. Salzburg or... I'm sure he played for somebody that we played recently. I can't remember his bloody name. What's his name? He's a striker. Not Garassi. I can't remember whether he plays for Leipzig or something like that. I can't think who it is, and no one in the chat's getting it either. Not Poulsen. No. Sorloth. That's it. Sorloth. Well done. Yeah, I've heard us be linked to him as well. Sorloth. I don't know what he's up to at the moment, but I've heard us get linked to him. Is it Villarreal? 28. Alexander Sorloth. Yeah, I don't know. Mojo's just gifted 20 memberships as well. You're all legends. Great show tonight. We're back in the morning at 10 o'clock. It's match day tomorrow. How exciting is that? And also Fabrizio Romano at 1:30. That's going to be a cracking show. I'll speak to you all later. Take care. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We've had a cracking show as ever.